What's going on, guys? Half Click up here. Welcome to my review of the 2014 Tiger 800 ABS model. This particular example is presented in sapphire blue. I'll talk about the various mods I've done to this bike, and then we'll take her for a ride and talk about both the pros and the cons. Now, I am the second owner of this motorcycle. I bought it with 4,600 miles on the odometer, and it just turned past 12,000 miles. We'll be coming up on 13,000 here momentarily, and we'll be performing the 12,000 mile service here shortly. Modifications real quick. We have the SW Motec headlight protector. We have the SW Motec handlebar risers. We have the SW Motec center stand. The GV Trekker Outback aluminum boxes. This is the factory Triumph top box. And a nice little carbon fiber tank pad with the Tiger 800 logo embossed inside. Now, this bike is fairly filthy right now, which is okay because it allows me to illustrate a couple of issues that have manifested themselves with this low mileage machine. So we're about to come up on 13,000 miles. It's all highway mileage, very limited off-road type stuff. The bike's never been dumped or anything crazy like that. You can probably see oil residue on the crankcase here. I don't know. It's one of those things, man. You know, Triumph motorcycles are kind of notorious for having fluid leaks. You look right here, you can see residue. Of course, when you wash the bike, all that goes away. Everything looks fine. But there is very slight oil seepage around the various gaskets here. Coming around on the left side of the bike, you can also see similar residue on the generator casing here. See that? I have gone back and retightened all of these bolts to factory torque specs, and lo and behold, sure enough, some of them were rather loose. The seepage has slowed down quite a bit. However, it is still a slight issue. What are you going to do, you know? Admittedly, at this point in time, I've basically just been ignoring it. I don't have oil spilling out of the bike, so I just kind of attribute it to being one of these little character traits of the Triumph engine, I guess, and so it is what it is. If I ever need to actually replace these gaskets because it gets so severe that it's a very evident issue, like I'm actually losing oil, then I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But for now, here she is, the engine in stock form, again, about to turn 13,000 miles. Well, enough talk, guys. What do you say we hop on the bike, take it for a ride, and talk about a real-time riding experience? Here we go. Oh, and by the way, you've probably noticed by the slightly rusty finish, that is the factory chain from 2014. Oh, we'll be replacing that too as well here shortly. So, you may notice that the service wrench is illuminated. Of course, she is due for her 12,000 mile service. I perform these services myself. By way of the Haynes manual, the Haynes service manual, and I use the Tiger Tool software on my laptop hooked into the little OBD2 computer setup here to reset the service light myself. Very signature sound. If you are familiar with Triumph, you know the whistle, right? The intake whistle. Almost sounds like a supercharger, right? It's fantastic. Oh, and you may have noticed that this is just the 800 ABS model. It has standard cast wheels known as the Roadie, right? So it didn't actually come with the front top mudguard known as the Beak. I added that. Very hard to find piece. Sapphire blue is the rarest paint scheme on these bikes, and yeah, it was a challenge to find, and I probably spent a little bit too much money on it, but I also really wanted it. Now, similar to the chain and sprocket set, I am on the factory set of tires, and if you look at the dash there, The light just turned off because a little bit of temperature has been established in the front tire, but you'll see that there is a factory TPMS setup on this machine, which is pretty cool. You know, 2014, some models of this machine came with heated seats and grips and cruise control and everything. Again, the 800 ABS is just the bare bones, but it does have TPMS. And so I have a known slow leak on the front tire. You see it's indicating we have 33 PSI. It actually takes 30 PSI to set off that alarm and warn you of your low tire pressure. And so we've gained 3 PSI just very quickly going down the road, and you see the little light, the TPMS light has turned off. Now I'll tell you, there are not very many cons about this motorcycle, and so let's just knock those out real quick. So I've already talked about the fact that the engine is slightly leaky, a little bit of oil residue around where the gaskets seal up, but aside from that, it is a hot running machine. In between your legs, man, like right now we're in Central Texas, the heat index is well over 100 degrees, and as soon as this bike gets fully up to temperature, you feel it in between your legs, especially at intersections and stoplights, stop and go traffic like you just saw. You can feel it in between your legs. You know, it's essentially a naked bike, being an adventure bike and all. And yeah, so there's a little bit of heat there, but it's bearable. By no means is it ever really uncomfortable, but it does catch your attention. It's a thing. All right, another con, maintenance costs. The thing about this bike, obviously, it's a British bike. Several parts can be sourced here in the States. However, some stuff you just can't find here, and you actually have to order it from overseas, straight from the United Kingdom. And so a lot of stuff can come at a premium price. For example, the 12,000 mile service kit that I just recently got in the mail, I plan on installing that this weekend because obviously the bike is due for that service. But that service kit from a dealership up in Pennsylvania was $208 plus tax. You know, all in all, it was like a $225 purchase. That's a little bit excessive in my book, guys. Just for, you know, a stack of gaskets and a couple of filters and some plugs, that, you know, that's out there. I don't know. But another thing about owning a Triumph, man, is you take a certain pride in owning this machine. Yes, it has its very minor faults and its little nuances, so to speak, but there's a pride involved with owning these motorcycles. They're kind of classy, you know. They've got a certain class about them, and so I will always buy genuine Triumph parts, aside from aftermarket accessories. When I service this machine, just give it what the makers intended. You know what I mean? And of course, you've seen I fly the Union Jack on the top case. You know, it's all about the theme. I have an appreciation for the machine and its heritage. So you know, but yeah, the parts can be expensive. Chain and sprocket set, genuine Triumph part. It's you know, it's $200, man. There's just no way around it. Everything is like $200 or $300 when it comes to servicing this machine. Even the tire selection is expensive, unless you go with some wonky brand, you know, like Shinko or something. It's one of these cheap brands, and even then you have trouble finding the correct tire size combo. It runs a 19 on the front and a 17 on the rear, and so that odd size match there is you'll find that your selection is quite expensive with tires as well. So now, my biggest gripe thus far, and it is a known issue with these bikes, is something called starter heat soak. So you see, we're kind of doing this stop and go stuff right now, right? Here, kind of riding through town. The phenomenon occurs when heat builds up around the starter, and so naturally, the more stop and go type riding you're doing, the hotter the starter gets. Now, my understanding is that it's kind of a two-part problem. First, the battery just does not put out enough voltage to spin the starter when it gets that hot. Secondly, the little gear that engages the flywheel supposedly swells under heat. And so what happens is, like, for example, this stop and go riding, if I had to stop and run an errand, say I had to stop at a store, shut the bike down, run inside, grab what I need to get, come back out to the bike, say that trip took about 10 minutes inside the store, you come back out to the bike and go to start it, it acts like the battery is dead. However, you know the battery is not dead because the gauge stays lit up, but it just will, you know, you'll hit the starter button, it'll go just like the battery's dead. You sit around, give it about 10 or 15 minutes more of just sitting there to where it can cool a little bit, and it'll turn over. Very strange phenomenon, very inconvenient, very aggravating. The way I overcome that is I carry various emergency things in my panniers here, and one of those items is a lithium-ion jump pack, and I have found that I can clip that jump pack onto the battery leads and it'll fire off like nothing. I mean, very quickly. And so that's how I get around that. And it's also worth mentioning that that is not an issue when it's cold outside. It's isolated to the summer months. So it's the natural heat of the bike accompanied by the high ambient air temperatures that combine for that unfortunate effect on the starter motor. Now there is a company here in the United States called Rick's Electrical, and it's known as Rick Starter, appropriately enough. And for the typical sum of just under $200, like everything else with this bike, you can have a Rick Starter. Unfortunately, the reviews on that starter are kind of mixed. Some guys have been running them for like 2 years without any issue, and some guys have reported running Rick Starter for a period of like 6 months and then having the same heat soaking issues. So who knows what the ultimate fix is? I do know that Triumph is apparently aware of the issue, and that it's not just with the Tiger but various bikes that use the same starter configuration on these triple power plants. So I don't know, it's just one of those caveats, man, that you have to deal with, and hopefully the Rick Starter you get in the mail is the one that fixes your issue. So that's something that I have yet to tackle. One of these days, after I replace the factory chain and sprocket set, I'll pick up a Rick Starter and try my luck at that. But those are all the cons I have, guys. Not very much to it. Slightly leaky gaskets, high maintenance costs, and starter heat soak. Outside of that, it's all good. And I'm not trying to be sarcastic. Like, this is a great motorcycle, man. Ergonomics, look at me. It's like sitting in a chair. The cushion of the seat is fantastic. A lot of guys complain about it and go with an aftermarket seat, but understand that I'm a sport bike rider. So I started my riding career on a Yamaha sport bike. I still ride that thing on Fridays to work. But other than that, the Tiger is now my primary commuting machine. I commute on this bike to work daily. And especially when you couple the SW Motec bar risers with this upright position, you know, it puts your arms a little higher up. It helps with that upper back burn that you'll get right in the middle of your back from riding hunched. You know, it's a better posture all around. Also, these risers help with standing up on the bike. Like if you're doing some off-road stuff, you don't have to lean forward at all to hold the handlebars in the standing position. You can stand straight up and down and reach your grips just fine, which is neat. Fuel mileage is exceptional for an 800cc machine. She gets around 40-41 miles to the gallon. There is a feature in the gauge cluster where you can hit the button and it'll actually show you your average fuel mileage as well as your real-time fuel mileage, or what they call instant. And yeah, 41 or so mpg. That's 87 octane. On my Yamaha, I have mods like advanced timing and such where I have to run 93. So this machine actually saves me money on gas compared to my Yamaha. It does have a slightly larger tank than my Yamaha does. But with today's gas prices, you know, 87 octane, you actually save quite a bit of cash filling up this bike. So again, an 800cc triple. It's a 3-cylinder. The power delivery of this bike is just great. You will not be disappointed by the torque. This bike has torque for days, man. Downshifting to get yourself out of a situation is actually pretty unnecessary. Any twist of the wrist will get you out of a predicament pretty quick without having to drop a gear. That is awesome. Here we are in 6th gear at 4,000 RPM, doing, you know, just under 60 miles an hour. In 6th gear, let's twist the throttle. Now we're doing 70. You know what I mean? It's impressive. Plenty of power. Perfect highway machine. Even with all the added weight of the panniers and the top box, the bike is still quick. In many circumstances, this motorcycle is faster than my Yamaha sport bike, I'll tell you that. Alright, let's see if we can demonstrate real quick what I'm talking about. Fourth gear, 80 miles an hour. You know, just like just like that. This bike's quick, man. It's the craziest thing, you know. 800cc triple. Like, you would expect that kind of acceleration, obviously, out of like the big Tiger Explorer, you know, the 1200. But yeah, 800cc, fantastic power. I enjoy it. And so here we are, interstate cruising, 80 mile an hour, about 57 or 5800 RPM, and you can see we're getting about 50 miles to the gallon. Pretty good, pretty good. You get off into your city riding, and it drops down into the 40s. Here you go. I'm going to add some throttle. See it dip down into the high 30s. You know, it's all relative, obviously. And so, as you can probably tell, this bike is really outfitted fantastically for long haul cruises, you know, road trips and all the things. I put my oldest son on the back and we go on various trips. We'll go down to Austin, you know, that's a good 3-hour ride. We'll go down there every year for MotoGP, down at Circuit of the Americas, do a little camping trip, right? You got your panniers, gear bags, all the things, tent, chairs, man. We load these things up, you know, and we head down that way, man. And I mean, we make it there and back, and you don't even really have to fill up the tank. You can just like put half a tank in for the way back and you're good. By the way, you can see here the handling is pretty sporty for what it is. I have dragged peg. Just pushing the bike to see. I actually did that the first week of ownership. I dragged pegs, and as a matter of fact, it was right there in that little turnaround after work one day. Straight up drag peg on the Tiger 800. So I know what its limit feels like. That was pretty much it right there, that kind of a lean. I would imagine the panniers are pretty close to the ground at that point too. Yeah. But so anyways, guys, if you have any comments about owning the Triumph Tiger 800, drop them down below, man. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. If you are a subscriber here, obviously you know that this is a Yamaha FZ6R channel first and foremost, but